It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when I caught a glint of metal from the corner of my eye. My heart stopped as I turned to see Linda, our HOA president, standing across the street, clutching a handgun. Her face was twisted with rage, and she was screaming at my daughter, Sophie, who stood trembling on our front lawn, barefoot, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sophie's autistic, and sometimes the world overwhelms her. Loud noises, sudden changes that can send her into a spiral. But no one saw, should ever point a gun at scared kid. Stop making a scene, or I'll end it for good. Linda's voice cut through the suburban calm like a knife. My stomach churned, adrenaline flooding my veins. Sophie's life was in danger, and every instinct in me screamed to protect her. What Linda didn't know, what I kept quiet to give Sophie a normal life, was that I'm the commander of our city SWAT team. I faced down armed threats in situations far deadlier than a neighborhood spat, but nothing could prepare me for this. We'd moved to Meadow VY Heights a year ago, drawn by its tidy lawns and promises of community. Sophie, 14 and high-functioning, thrives on routine, so we thought the structured HOA would be perfect. At first, Linda seemed like just an overzealous rule enforcer nitpicking about mailbox colors or grass height. Annoying but manageable. Then her attention zeroed in on Sophie. The chalk drawings Sophie loved to scribble on our driveway. Unsightly, Linda called them. The wind chimes we hung to calm Sophie's senses. A violation. When Sophie had meltdown scrying or rocking on the porch, Linda would appear, arms crossed, glaring like Sophie was a blight on her perfect neighborhood. We tried to explain Sophie's autism, hoping for understanding. Linda would nod tightly, but her eyes always betrayed her irritation. I kept my job under wraps, not wanting Sophie to be the SWAT guy's kid. I figured reason could smooth things over. I was wrong. Linda's complaints escalated. One day, she pounded on our door, fuming about disturbing noises, Sophie's cries during a meltdown triggered by a neighbor's lawnmower. I bit back my anger, hoping CIVY Lighty would prevail. Then, at a community meeting, she ranted about disruptions lowering property values, her words clearly aimed at Sophie. I confronted her afterward, explaining autism isn't something you fix. She brushed me off, saying we needed to teach Sophie respect. The petty violations piled up, chalk left out, chimes too low, a kiddie pool spill. Exhausting. My wife, Emily, suggested meeting the full HOA board, but Linda dodged us, claiming scheduling issues. 2 weeks ago, a typed letter appeared in our mailbox, threatening fines or legal action for domestic disturbances. The phrase was underlined, and my blood boiled. Still, I held back, trained by years of high-stakes ops to stay calm under pressure. But Linda's hostility only grew, especially when Sophie's meltdown spilled into public VYEW. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, warned us Linda was bad-mouthing Sophie, calling her an undesirable element dragging down property values. The idea that my daughter was a threat to real estate made me sick. I started SAVYing every note, every violation slip, even photographing Linda's snide messages scrawled on our driveway. Keep it quiet. I considered filing a city complaint, but kept putting it off, hoping reason would win. That hope died on that Saturday when I was fixing a fence lat in the backyard. Sophie was in the front, playing with her sensory beads, when I heard a shriek. I sprinted around the house, calling her name, and froze. Linda stood there, gun raised, shouting at Sophie, who dropped her beads and was tapping her thighs, a sign of her distress. "I've had enough," Linda hissed, stepping closer. "Linda, put the gun down." I roared, leaping across the yard. She turned slightly, her eyes wild, the barrel still pointed at Sophie. My daughter's tearful moan ripped through mesh couldn't grasp the danger, but she felt the fear. I raised my hands, using the steady tone I'd honed in standoffs. "This is insane, Linda. Lower the weapon." "No," she spat. "I told you to control her. This neighborhood won't tolerate her screaming and weirdness." My fists clenched, but I kept my voice calm, stepping between her and Sophie. "If you shoot her, you'll regret it forever. This is a crime." She scoffed. "Crime? I'm not the one ruining everyone's peace with tantrums. Her eyes gleamed with a manic sense of righteousness. Sophie whimpered, stumbling back, and I feared Linda might fire out of spite. A neighbor, Tom, stepped onto his porch, gasping. "Linda, stop," he yelled. She swung the gun toward him, screaming for him to stay out of it. He ducked, fumbling for his phone. Seconds ticked by, and I weighed my options: lunge and risk a shot, or talk her down and pray she didn't fire. But I couldn't let her keep that gun on my daughter. "Linda," I said, voice low, "you don't know who I am. I lead the SWAT team. If you harm my daughter, there's no escaping what comes next." Her face flickered with doubt. "You're lying," she hissed, but a bead of sweat rolled down her temple. "Try me," I said. "Units are on standby. Threatening a disabled child? Your life's over." She laughed shrilly. "Why should I believe you? You've ignored every rule. Your freak daughter's destroying my peace." That word sent fury surging through me, but I stayed steady, inching closer to shield Sophie. "Last chance, Linda. Put it down. You think you can scare me with your fake SWAT nonsense?" she snarled, swinging the barrel. Another neighbor peeked out, phone in hand, likely calling 911. Sophie sobbed, clutching my shirt, her face pressed against my back. Sirens wailed faintly, growing louder. Linda's eyes darted toward the street. "Don't move," she snapped. "I'll fire if they come." I kept her talking. "Why do you hate her so much? She's a kid with autism." My voice shook, the father in me breaking through. "She's a brat." Linda spat, "Always moaning, throwing fits. I warned you, but you never fixed it." Her logic stung, but I pressed on. "You can't fix autism. You support it. Show compassion." "Compassion?" she sneered. "And watch my property value tank? No thanks." Her arms trembled, the gun swaying. Sirens roared closer, and police cars screeched onto the street. Officers leapt out, weapons drawn, shouting for Linda to drop the gun. She spun, panic flaring, while V-whined the handgun wildly. I barked at the officers. "Child behind me. Hold fire unless necessary." They recognized me from joint training, their faces tight with urgency. Linda screamed at them to back off, or she'd shoot. My throat went dry. This was a tragedy waiting to happen. "Linda, you're out of options," I said, stepping forward. "Put it down." She whirled, aiming at me, then at Sophie's feet. My heart stopped. I lunged, hooking her wrist upward. She shrieked, pulling the trigger. The gunshot thundered, the bullets sailing skyward. Screams erupted from onlookers. Sophie cried out, hands over her ears. I twisted Linda's wrist, and the gun clattered to the pavement. Officers rushed in, tackling her, cuffing her as she thrashed. Smoke curled from the fallen gun. My body shook, but I spun to Sophie, pulling her into my arms, checking for injuries. She was unharmed, but trembling, tears streaking her face. Relief hit me, so hard my knees buckled. I wanted to scream at Linda, but she was pinned, spitting obscenities about disruptive neighbors as police read her rights. Sirens wailed, neighbors gawked, some filming. I guided Sophie to the curb, rubbing her back as she rocked, whispering, "Too loud, too loud." An officer offered medical help, but I focused on calming her. Emily raced home, her face pale with fear. She hugged Sophie tightly, tears falling, then turned to me, demanding answers. I recounted the standoff, my voice low. She covered her mouth, trembling. We declined hospitals overwhelmed Sophie and took her inside. That night, nightmares woke Sophie repeatedly, her sobs echoing fears of the loud noise. Emily and I stayed by her bed, whispering comfort. The neighborhood buzzed with shock. Linda's arrest was the talk of Meadow VYEW. Some neighbors apologized, admitting they'd found her strict but never expected violence. The HOA ousted her, issuing a statement against threats to vulnerable residents. Suddenly, folks who'd once whispered about Sophie's oddness sent casseroles and letters of support. I accepted them, though their silence before stung. Legally, Linda faced assault, criminal threats, and child endangerment charges, with hate crime enhancements possible. Video footage, witness accounts, and my testimony as a SWAT leader sealed her fate. She was convicted, sentenced to years in prison. Sophie struggled, jumping at loud noises, haunted by the gunshot. Therapy helped, and Emily cut work hours to be home more. We added security cameras for Sophie's peace of mind. One day she asked, "Daddy, will that lady come back?" I reassured her Linda was gone, but her teary whisper, "I didn't do anything wrong," broke me. She was right. She was just being herself, and it nearly cost her life. Slowly, Meadow VYEU changed. The new HOA president, a kind retiree, pushed inclusive VY tie. Neighbors organized autism awareness events, and kids joined Sophie to draw chalk art. Mrs. Carter and VY Ted her to water flowers, a small gesture that meant everything. Sophie started an art class, sketching VY Brandt murals of hope. One evening, she found an old violation notice from Linda and tossed it in the trash, exhaling like she was letting go. I hugged her, my chest tight with pride. A year later, the HOA held a diversity festival. Sophie, wearing noise-canceling headphones, wandered the stalls, smiling at kids who showed her their face paint. Emily and I watched, relieved. The spot where Linda threatened Sophie was just a sidewalk now, and Sophie spun a pinwheel, obliquely VY us to its past. Neighbors waved, no longer scowling. Meadow VYEW was becoming the community we'd hoped for. Still, I lie awake sometimes, replaying that day the gun, Linda snarl the shot. My SWAT training saved us, but the fear of losing Sophie lingers. I kiss her good night with gratitude, vowing to stand between her and any threat. Linda's gone, her appeal denied, her obsession with standards her downfall. But Sophie's resilience, and our fight against her hatred, has forged a stronger community. As Sophie sketches sunflowers in neon chalk, I know we've won not just for her, but for every kid who deserves to exist without fear. What do you think? Was Linda's hatred driven by prejudice, or did she genuinely believe she was protecting the neighborhood? Should neighbors have stepped in sooner, or was their silence understandable? Could this happen in your community? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories that spark real talk.